The basement door was painted shut. I stood in the house I grew up in, peeling back 40 years of latex with my fingernails, and I could hear it breathing on the other side. Not a person. The house. A slow, wet expansion behind the wood, like lungs filling. My mother's voice drifted down the hallway behind me, calm as Sunday morning. "You were never supposed to open that, Mara." I turned. She was smiling. They were all smiling, my father, my sister Lena, the relatives I hadn't seen in years, standing in a perfect half circle in the dark. "We told you we wished you'd never been born," she whispered. "We meant it as a kindness." The door clicked, and from behind it, something that sounded exactly like me began to laugh. The hook and the first warning. My mother didn't whisper it. She said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "I wish you were never born." The private dining room at Aldridge's went silent. Forks froze midair. The string quartet seemed to lose its breath between notes. 20 pairs of eyes, my colleagues, my professors, the manager who just toasted me swung toward me, waiting for the quiet daughter to crumble the way I always had. But I didn't crumble, because in that exact moment, something underneath the table brushed against my ankle. Cold, deliberate, a pressure like fingers, curling once around my shoe before letting go. I looked down. There was nothing there, just the white tablecloth hanging still. When I looked back up, my mother was smiling. Not angrily, not even cruelly. She was smiling with relief, the way you smile when a long appointment is finally over. "There it is," she said softly. "Took you long enough, sweetheart." I grew up in a tall, narrow house on Hartwell Street in Rochester, the kind of house neighbors called charming and historic, the kind with a basement no one was allowed to enter. From my earliest memory, there was an order to our home, a gravity everything orbited around. And it wasn't me. It was my younger sister, Lena, the golden one. If Lena sneezed, my mother fetched tissues like she was tending royalty. If Lena drew a stick figure, my father pinned it to the wall and called it art. When I won the regional science fair at 14, my mother didn't look up from folding laundry. "That's nice," she murmured. Then, "Lena's at her wellness appointment today. She's so much brighter lately, don't you think?" Wellness appointment. That phrase haunted my childhood. Lena went to them constantly once a month, always on the new moon, always at a clinic none of us were allowed to drive her to. She'd come home pale and glassy, sleeping for 2 days, and emerge somehow more radiant than before, as if something had been added to her. I, on the other hand, was never sick. I was never taken anywhere. I was simply maintained, fed, clothed, ignored, kept. I worked early mornings at a coffee shop through high school, studied until my eyes burned, took 3 jobs in college to cover bills my parents never explained. They never asked how I managed. They only asked gently whether I was eating enough, sleeping enough, staying healthy. It was the only attention I ever got, a strange clinical concern for my body, never my mind, never my heart. "We just want you strong, Mara," my mother would say, pressing a hand flat against my chest, feeling my heartbeat like she was checking something off a list. When I got into my MBA program in Seattle, I let myself hope it would finally change. I booked the private room at Aldridge's. I paid for everything. I built a bridge I still believed could exist. Then my mother said she wished I'd never been born, and something brushed my ankle under the table, and she smiled with relief. I pushed back my chair. The scrape cut the silence like a blade. I walked out into the Seattle rain without looking back, not at my parents, not at my manager half rising to follow. I stood on the wet sidewalk, untethered, severed, waiting for tears that wouldn't come. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. It didn't say "you embarrassed us." It said something I read 4 times before my hand started shaking. "The clock has already started. You have until the new moon. Come home or it takes you anyway. We're so sorry, baby. We thought we had more time." I stared at it, rain blurring the screen. A prank. A drunk text. Anything. Then a second message arrived, a photograph. My childhood bedroom, exactly as I'd left it at 18. Except scratched into the wall above my old bed, in handwriting that was unmistakably mine, were 3 words I had no memory of writing. "Let me out." 3 words in her own handwriting, scratched into a wall she hadn't touched in years. Let me out. But Mara was right here, standing free in the Seattle rain. So who was trapped inside that house, writing in her hand? Why did her mother say it would take her anyway? And what, exactly, had they been keeping healthy in the daughter they pretended not to love? The answers were buried in a basement painted shut for 40 years, and the new moon was 9 days away. I didn't go home. Not at first. I told myself it was harassment. I blocked their numbers. I threw myself into my consulting work, into the restructuring project that swallowed entire days. And for a while the silence felt like victory. Then the messages found new ways in. My work email from an address that didn't exist. 8 days. A handwritten note slid under my apartment door. 7. She's getting stronger. She remembers your face now. No fingerprints. No footage on the hallway camera, just a 4-second gap where the feed went black. On the 6th night, my boyfriend Daniel came over with takeout, pretending he wasn't worried. He found me sitting on the floor in the dark, staring at the old photograph of my bedroom wall. Mara, this is insane. Call the police. And tell them what? That my parents are texting me a countdown. He took my hand and stopped. He turned my wrist over toward the lamp. There on the inside of my forearm was a thin white scar I'd carried my whole life. My mother always said I'd fallen on glass as a baby, but under the warm light, Daniel saw what I'd never noticed. It wasn't a random cut. It was a symbol. A circle with a line bisecting it, clean and surgical. Deliberate. Babe, he said quietly, Lena has the same scar. I saw it at the dinner. Exact same spot. That night I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m. my phone lit up with a video call from Lena. I almost didn't answer. When I did, she was sitting in the dark of our parents' house, her face lit only by the screen, and she was crying. You have to come home, she whispered. Please. I can't carry it alone anymore. It's too heavy in 2 bodies and you took half of it away when you left. Lena, what are you talking about? The thing in the basement. Her voice cracked. It's not a thing, Mara. It's us. It's the 3rd one. The one Mom and Dad made room for. There were only ever 2 of us. You and me. She laughed, this awful broken sound. There were 3. Don't you remember the wellness appointments? They weren't for me. They were splitting it between us so neither of us would die carrying it. You were the vessel, Mara. The strong one. The healthy one. They kept you invisible so you'd never go looking, so you'd never realize you were full. A noise behind her. A wet, dragging sound across the floor. Lena's eyes went wide. She leaned close to the camera and breathed. It heard me. It knows you're awake now. When you cut the connection, when you walked out, when you blocked them, you didn't free yourself. You severed the leash. It can find you now. The screen filled with static. And in the static for half a second I saw a face. Not Lena's. Not mine. Both. A face stitched from 2 faces, wearing my eyes and Lena's mouth, smiling the same relieved smile my mother had worn at the restaurant. Then the call dropped. I sat frozen, heart slamming, the scar on my arm beginning to itch. No. Burn, a deep heat radiating outward like something under the skin was waking up after a long, long sleep. I rolled up my sleeve. The symbol was glowing. A dull, ember red, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. And as I watched, the line through the circle slowly began to move, rotating a few degrees like the hand of a clock. Counting down. My phone buzzed one final time. My mother. 5 days. We love you. We always did, we just couldn't let ourselves get close in case we had to let you go. Come home, Mara. Let us finish what we started before it finishes you. I grabbed my keys. I was going to Rochester. Not because I forgave them. Because I finally understood the cold concern, the lifetime of being maintained instead of loved. They hadn't been ignoring me my whole life. They'd been feeding me to something. Slowly. Carefully. Keeping the vessel healthy for the day it would be opened. The vessel. That's all she ever was. Every birthday they forgot. Every ribbon they never celebrated. It wasn't neglect. It was distance, the way a farmer doesn't name the animal he plans to slaughter. But what was living inside Mara? What was the 3rd one Lena begged her to share? And why did her parents, who claimed to wish her dead, now whisper that they loved her? 5 days remained. And the clock was buried in her own skin. The house on Hartwell Street looked smaller than I remembered. Smaller and wrong, the windows too dark for early evening, the front door already open, as if it had been waiting. My mother stood in the doorway. She didn't say hello. She looked at my arm at the glowing symbol burning through my sleeve, and her face collapsed into something I'd never seen from her. Tears. Real ones. "Oh, thank God," she breathed. "You came in time." Inside, the air was thick and humid, like breathing through a wet cloth. The whole family was there, aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew, all sitting in the living room in absolute silence, all watching me with that same expression. Not love, not hate, but gratitude. The gratitude you feel toward a sacrifice. My father took my hands. His were trembling. "Let me explain before you hate us more than you already do," he said. 40 years ago, your grandmother made a bargain with something that lives under this house, something that was here before the house, before Rochester, before any of us. It agreed to give this family everything. Prosperity, health, the comfortable street, the stable life. And the price was simple. It needed a place to grow. A body split across generations, fed slowly so the host would never break. "Lena's wellness appointments," I whispered. "We split the burden between you two as infants. 2 bodies, half a god in each, so neither of you would die young carrying it whole." His voice broke. "But it grows. And on its 40th year, this new moon, it becomes too large for 2. It must be consolidated, poured back into a single vessel. The stronger one." I understood now why I'd never been sick. Why they checked my heartbeat. Why my mother said she wished me never born, not from hatred, but from grief. Because they'd always known which daughter was stronger, which one would have to hold all of it, which one they'd have to lose. "You're going to put Lena's half into me," I said. My mother nodded, weeping. "And then it will be whole. And then it will be born. It hollows out the vessel from the inside and walks out wearing your face. You won't survive it, Mara. No one ever does. That's why we kept you distant, so when this day came, we could bear it." She gripped my shoulders. "But there's another way. There's always been another way. We just never had the courage." "What way?" She looked toward the basement door at the end of the hall, painted shut, layer over layer, 40 years of latex sealing something in. "If a willing host opens the door and walks in before the new moon," she said, "the thing can be returned, sent back down where grandmother found it. It's never been done because it requires the vessel to give itself up freely, to walk into the dark and let it pull the entire burden out at once. Most die in the doorway, but it's the only way to free Lena. And maybe you." That's when I heard it. From behind the painted door. A voice. My voice. "Don't listen to them, Mara," it cooed, soft and sweet and wearing my exact cadence. "They lied your whole life. Why believe them now? Stay out here with me. We can be free together. You and me. We're the same person after all. We always were." The symbol on my arm flared white hot. I screamed. And in the mirror across the hall, I saw for one horrifying instant my reflection move independently of me, tilting its head, smiling, raising one finger to its lips. "Shh." Lena stumbled into the hallway, pale as paper, blood leaking from her own glowing scar. "It's lying to you," she gasped. "It wants the door to stay shut. It wants the new moon. It wants to be whole. Whatever it says in your voice, it is not you." The relatives began to chant. Low, rhythmic. The house groaned, the floorboards swelling like ribs, and the basement door, painted shut for 40 years, slowly began to unstick itself from the inside. The door her family painted shut was opening on its own, and the thing behind it spoke in Mara's voice, begged in Mara's words, smiled with Mara's face. But which one was lying? The parents who fed her to a god, or the god that wore her skin? To save her sister, she'd have to walk willingly into the dark and let it tear 40 years of horror out of her body at once. Most die in the doorway. The new moon was rising, and her reflection had stopped obeying her. The paint cracked down the middle of the door like splitting skin. A smell rolled out, copper and wet earth and something sweetly rotten. The smell of my whole childhood, I realized. The smell that had always lived faintly under our house. The thing behind the door pushed it open another inch, and I saw it. It was me, and it was Lena, and it was neither. A figure assembled from the two of us, taller than both, its skin a patchwork of our skins, its face a constant shifting argument between my features and my sister's. Where its eyes should have been, there were only the symbols that circle and line burning in the dark. 40 years, it sighed, and its voice was a chorus. Mine, Lena's, my mother's, voices I didn't recognize, generations of vessels layered together. 40 years of careful feeding. And you'd send me back? After they kept you alive just for this? It extended a hand made of both our hands. Come to me, Mara. Let me finish. It only hurts for a moment. And then there is no more loneliness. No more being invisible. I see you. I am the only thing that has ever truly seen you. And God help me that landed. Because it was true. My whole life I'd begged to be seen. And here was something that knew every cell of me, that had grown inside me, that wanted me more than anyone ever had. I took a step toward it. Mara, no. Lena lunged, grabbing my burning arm. The contact made both our scars flare, and suddenly I could feel her. Her fear. Her 40 years of those wellness appointments. The needles, the chanting, the thing growing in her too. And underneath it all, a love so fierce it knocked the air out of me. My sister, the golden one, the favorite, had spent her whole life being prepared as a backup vessel in case I died first. The favoritism, the adoration, the spotlight, it was all just keeping the spare comfortable. We were both sacrifices. We'd just been told different lies. It told me the same thing, Lena sobbed. Every appointment. I'm the only one who sees you. It's not love, Mara. It's a hook. It needs you to walk to it willingly. That's the only way it becomes whole. The thing's face contorted. The chorus of voices dropped into a single furious tone, my mother's exact voice, from the restaurant. I wish you were never born. And I finally understood. That sentence hadn't come from my mother at all. It had spoken through her, that night at the dinner, testing me, reaching across the country, trying to break me open early. My mother had been its mouthpiece her whole life. Every cold word, every dismissal, half of it was a mother trying to keep distance from a daughter she'd have to lose. And half of it was the thing speaking through the people who'd fed it. My parents fell to their knees in the hallway. My father was praying. My mother looked at me with everything she'd held back for 40 years. I do love you, she choked. I always did. I just thought if I let myself I wouldn't survive losing you. So I pushed you away to make it bearable. And it used that. It hid inside my coldness. Forgive me, Mara. Forgive me. The new moon was minutes from full dark. The symbol on my arm was almost complete, the line nearly back to where it started. When the clock closed, it would pour Lena's half into me and become whole no matter what I chose. There was only one move left. I looked at the open door. At the dark beyond it that wanted me to walk in willingly. So I would. But not the way it wanted. I grabbed Lena's hand, fused our two glowing scars together, palm to palm, and I made my choice not out of surrender, but out of spite. Out of 40 years of being unseen and finally refusing to give the watcher what it craved. You want me to come to you? I whispered to the thing wearing my face. Fine. But I'm not coming empty. I'm coming to take back what you stole from both of us. And I pulled my sister with me, both of us screaming, straight through the doorway into the dark. She walked into the dark on purpose, but not to surrender. Two sisters, two halves of a god, joining hands in the doorway most people die in. The thing wanted one willing vessel. What happens when it gets two who refuse to be hollowed out? In the black beneath the house, where 40 years of family bargains were buried, Mara would learn the final, devastating truth. There had never been three of them. There had only ever been one, and it had been waiting her entire life to use her name. The dark beneath the house wasn't a basement. It was throat. Wet walls that pulsed, a floor that gave like flesh, and at the center, a pit going down forever, breathing slow and patient. This was where my grandmother had knelt 40 years ago. This was where every vessel before me had been emptied. The thing was here too, whole now, towering, its patchwork face finally settling, locking into a single image as it pulled the last of Lena's half toward it. And the face it settled on was mine. Only mine. Not Lena's. Mine. You never understood, it said almost tenderly. Lena was the decoy. The favorite, the loved one, the bright one to keep your eyes on her, so you'd never look at yourself. There was never a third sibling, Mara. There was only ever you. You are not the vessel. You are the thing. You have been since before you were born. The bargain didn't put a god into a child. It dressed a god as a child and let it grow up believing it was unloved, so that one day it would walk willingly into its own birth. The floor tilted. 40 years rearranged themselves in my mind. The wellness appointments, Lena being fed pieces of me to keep me small, to keep me distracted, to keep me human just long enough. The cold parents who couldn't love me because you cannot love what you know is not really your child. My whole starving life engineered so that I would crave being seen, so that when this thing finally offered to see me, I'd say yes. I'd walked in willingly. I had completed the bargain. I felt myself beginning to come apart, the human Mara peeling away like the paint on the door, and underneath vast, ancient, hungry was the truth of what I was. But the thing forgot one detail. It forgot Lena's hand in mine. Because Lena wasn't a decoy. Lena was real. 40 years of being the golden child, and underneath it she had loved me genuinely, fiercely. The only true love in that entire house. And love, real human love, was the one thing a god dressed as a girl had never been given. The one variable the bargain couldn't predict. As I dissolved, Lena didn't let go. She held on and she poured herself in, her memories, her warmth, every birthday she'd celebrated while I was forgotten. Freely given to me for the first time. Not fed. Not split. Gifted. And the thing screamed. Because a god can consume what's taken. It cannot survive what's freely loved. The human half of me, the half that was only ever a costume, Lena filled it so completely with herself that there was no longer any hollow place left to be born into. The vessel was full. Not of a god. Of a sister. The pit closed. The walls collapsed inward. The ancient thing, denied its birth at the final second, was pulled screaming back down into the dark it came from, taking 40 years of my false memories with it. I woke on the basement floor in an ordinary, dusty, empty room. The painted door hung off its hinges. Upstairs, my parents wept, finally truly free, the bargain broken, the debt erased. But Lena was gone. She'd given herself to fill me. There was no body. Only her glowing scar, now faintly warm on my arm beside my own. Two symbols side by side, beating like a double heartbeat. I live in Seattle now. My work thrives. The magazine called it resilience. Strangers message me, thanking me for surviving a family that couldn't love them. I don't correct them. I don't tell them that some nights my reflection moves a half second too late. That I sometimes catch myself smiling Lena's smile in mirrors. That when I'm alone, a voice that is hers and mine and something older whispers that the dark beneath Hartwell Street is patient. That 40 years is nothing to what waits below. That bargains can be remade. I don't tell them the worst part. Last week, the scar on my arm, the line through the circle, began very slowly to move again. They spent my whole life pretending I was never born, and now I understand it wasn't cruelty. It was a warning they were too afraid to say out loud. Some children were never children. At all.